G'day legends, I'm Jason from TIACS and I'm about to take a deep dive into who TIACS is and what we do with Bryn.
Let's get it started. So Jason, what is TIACS?
TIACS stands for This is a Conversation Starter, but to talk about TIACS I've really just got to wind the clock back a little bit and talk about TradeMut, and I'm wearing one of the TradeMut shirts today. Back in 2015, a couple of young tradies working on a residential building site, working together, got the phone call that no mate wants to receive, and that is that they lost one of their mates to suicide, unfortunately, back in 2015. So with that, the boys set out on this vision and this mission and this way to go out there and how do we change blue collar mental health? How do we start conversations within the blue collar industry? So they launched TradeMut in 2018. And the whole idea of the shirts is just to make an invisible issue impossible to ignore and start conversation. And on the back of all the shirts, it's got This is a Conversation Starter, which is the acronym for TIACS. After they started TradeMut, they then realised that they wanted to be a social enterprise, which means 50% of the profits have to go back to a non-for-profit organisation in Australia. But also there was something missing. People were buying the shirts and starting conversations, but they had nowhere to direct them to getting that free or that counselling support that is much needed after they've exhausted their support crew and they've had a chat with their mate. So with that, in true Dan and Ed fashion, a couple of young tradies, they just went, you know what? We're just going to go and start our own non-for-profit organisation, and that's when they launched TIACS in 2020. And since then we've been able to support over 17,000 Australians in the blue-collar industry with free mental health counselling.
Amazing. And tell us about the support. So, what does TIACS do in terms of that support?
Yeah, so TIACS, we're really focused on that early intervention mental health counselling support. So, it's for tradies, it's for the truckies, it's for the rural and blue collar workers, and we can't forget those that care about them as well have access to our service. And it's just all about getting people to reach out when they feel like they're having a bad day or they've had a bit of a rough week. TIACS is there as a support service to be able to connect up with, and it's quite easy. It's a call and text service, so you don't even have to actually go anywhere, get in your car, go visit a GP to get this support. You can actually do it on the construction site, in your ute at the end of the day where you struggled and you've had a rough day and you need to connect up with someone. And when you connect up with a counsellor, they're all qualified, they're all professional counsellors, and they give you a relatable service because we're dealing with the blue collar industry and tradies every day.
And personally, how did you find yourself in this role at TIACS? And what is the role at TIACS?
So I look after everything externally, so a lot of the partnership-based stuff I look after with TIACS, but TIACS has been going for 3 years and I've been with TIACS for 18 months, but a few years ago I found myself on the end of a bed. I'd done 30 years of corporate retail leadership, and my wife walked into me one day and said, hey, there's something not quite right at the moment, what's going on with you? And I was really struggling because I was doing a lot of travel with work. There's a lot of stress that comes in with retail, and I remember her walking in and asking that question, and I broke down in tears. And for me, I was struggling mentally. My cup wasn't full, it was really empty, but I'm trying to fill everyone else's cups up. And she said something to me which has really resonated with me. What are we going to do about it? And I think that's a real key statement. A lot of the time it's not what am I going to do about it, it's what we're going to do about it. And with that, she suggested that maybe I need to have a change of career, and I took 4 years out of my career of going and doing different things and Uber driving and working with people with a disability, and set up a personal training studio with people with a disability. But then something resonated with me when I saw that this organisation called TIACS and a couple of young tradies were looking for somebody with a bit of experience around networking and partnerships to come on board. And knowing my own background of history and also growing up with a father that fought in Vietnam and had PTSD his whole life, it was my opportunity to give back in a way, and I just resonated, this is my opportunity.
Okay, amazing. And what are you seeing in the industry at the moment? Since you've joined TIACS, what are you seeing in the construction industry?
We're seeing a lot more, but one of the most positive things we are seeing is people are reaching out. One of our higher sector of industry that is calling us now and texting us is the construction industry. I think it's up to close to 28% are construction workers that are reaching out to us. But they'll reach out for a number of different reasons. One, it could be, they're having a struggle with their relationship at home. The other one could be financial. Another one could be that, they're just having a bit of a rough day and they had no one to talk to and they just needed a one-off chat with somebody. But we are definitely seeing a trend around that relationship and then the struggles that may come with financials and the cost of living as well.
Yeah, I know that's a big thing at the moment, the cost of living and inflation and also builders with tight margins. And it seems to all kind of be hitting home at the moment. And I know there is a bit of a kind of, negative stigma around mental health. And so what's the strategy of TIACS to overcome this negative perception, of mental health? Yeah,
it's a good question, and I think it's a real thing that the community has to come together with on this one. And we talk about physical health a lot, and there's lots of ads and promos and everything that goes on with physical health, but there's not a lot around mental health, and we really need to change the narrative of how mental health is spoken about, not just within the blue collar industry, but the wider community of Australia. And for an organisation like TIACS, we want people out there that are maybe having that bad day or having that challenge to think about TIACS as being your personal trainer for your mental fitness, a little bit like your personal trainer for your physical fitness, and that it is okay to open up. One of the things that we often get is the hesitation of people knowing about our service, but what's the next step? Might not need this service, and I'm okay, but I'm having a bit of a struggle, but I'm still okay, I'll get through it. That's really the tipping point of somebody when they're having that time, is to reach out to our service, connect up with a counsellor. And only the other week I asked one of our counsellors that, what happens when somebody rings through? What do you say to this person? And he said quite simply, this conversation today is going to be like two mates having a chat. It might get a bit heavier, but at the end of the day, we're just having a conversation. And I think that's where we've got to break down those barriers, that it is okay to open up. And I think the advantage of us having a text service and a call service is, if you don't feel comfortable picking up the phone and calling, you can actually still use the text service available. And we get text every day of somebody just texting in and saying, hey, I'm struggling right now, can someone call me back? Or, hey, my partner's struggling, is there any chance that you could call them? So when I mentioned earlier about those that care about them, we're there for them as well, to get them through the challenge that they may be experiencing with their loved one, that may be just going through that mental health experience.
Yeah, and I know you've got these counsellors, and they're armed with the phones and sending texts out to the trades. How is this all funded? How are you paying for the counsellors, and how are you, generating the revenue on the other side to fund the organisation? Yeah,
well, as I said earlier, TradeMut, they're one of our funders, so 50% of the profits from their organisation comes directly back. So when everyone buys a shirt, any TradeMut branded stuff, they know that it's actually putting back into a social impact way. But also, we're funded by the industry for the industry. So we've got industry partners out there that are in construction, within trucking, within rural sectors, that realise that there's an opportunity for them to be able to give back in a direct way and make a social impact with transparency. We're able to provide them with data that shows where their money is actually being invested into, down to how many clients they're supporting, how many hours of conversation they're funding. But also, that's from a corporate perspective, but we can't forget about the everyday Aussie that wants to have an impact as well and make a regular donation or run a fundraising event and have some fun with it. And not only does that create some extra funds for TIACS to be able to fund more counsellors, it actually creates awareness in a community that's really embracing mental health within that blue collar trade industry.
Might be a tax deduction there as well, potentially.
Well, when you're a DGR1 status, definitely you can get anything over $2, you can actually claim through tax. But I guess, and that's a really good question I can probably put back to you, Bryn, is that from your perspective, we've spoken about financials and the impact that's having. What are you seeing within your organisation, your business around tradies reaching out?
Yeah, well, it's a tough time at the moment, particularly residential builders, obviously well publicised, with high inflation and fixed price contracts, that they're unable to kind of adjust those contracts up to allow for the input costs that are coming in, and that's definitely a very stressful stressful time for those owners. A lot of them are mum and dad owners, or some of them move more up to corporate, but it's definitely a very stressful time for them. So I can imagine, there'd be a lot of mental health in that space. But construction is a bit of a two-stroke kind of, you have commercial and residential and other areas are doing really, really well. So it's not a paintbrush for one for all, I guess you'd say. So if we want to jump on board with TIACS, there's obviously two areas we could jump on board from. One's on a corporate perspective, if we want to donate or help assist with the funding, and we'll put some links at the bottom of the socials. And then the second element would be, if you are struggling or you've got employees or family members that are struggling, click the link and get onto these counsellors, whether it's via text message or phone, and get that assistance. So I guess that's the main message from today.
Yeah, definitely. And we have a vision at TIACS is to be the mental health support service you tell your mates about. So if you've got a mate that's struggling, or you're struggling yourself, or even just reach out to use the service, just so you know what it's like to reach out to a mental health counselling service. Things might be going great, but just send us a text today, or give us a call and just get a feel for it, so that when you are struggling or you've got a mate that's struggling, it's a little bit easier for you to sort of refer TIACS onto. So we'd love more corporates and companies out there to jump on board and support us, but also we want more people to be reaching out to us so we can break down these barriers that it's okay to open up and be vulnerable when it comes to mental health.
That's the main message, isn't it? Well, Jason, thanks a lot for coming along today, and let's push this message as far as we can, I think.
Thanks for having us.
No problems. If this content was helpful for your business, make sure you hit the subscribe button and don't forget to click the notification bell. That way you'll get notified whenever I post a video.